I'm here at St. Stephen's Catholic Church in Portland, Oregon, and today is the 5th day in our Novena to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. We continue with Dietrich von Hildebrand's book, The Heart, an analysis of human and divine affectivity. Today we're going to look at heartlessness, the tyrannical heart, and the heart as the real self. Let's see if we can get to all three. This is chapters 6, 7, and 8, and then we'll move into the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Well, let's see how we can do today. So we begin with heartlessness, and this is a crippling of a center in a man's soul. Now, the heart in the narrower sense is the most intimate and personal core of tender affectivity. Now, obviously, the heartless man also possesses this center, only it is silenced or it's paralyzed in him. Hence, it is of the utmost importance to understand the relation between the moral sphere and the heart in the narrower sense, and we must see the various ways in which moral disorders can close up the heart. Now first, the heart is necessarily silenced in any man so dominated by pride and concupiscence that morality plays no role in his life. We may rightly say of him that he has no heart. Now in literature we have several characters. He names whether it is a Cain or a Iago, a Richard III, a Don Giovanni, or a Don Rodrigo in Manzoni's Betrothed. Well, you'll have to look up all of these characters. But such a man has no heart. And all of these are classic examples of men whose entire approach to life is dedicated exclusively by pride and concupiscence, men for whom only one thing matters, namely the gratification of their pride or concupiscence. In vain would we appeal to their hearts. In vain would we try to evoke their compassion or to move them. These men are no affective cripples, as the utilitarian pragmatists are, nor are they the victims of intellectual hypertrophy. These men rather have a wild, dark, and strong affectivity, but their heart is buried, and such men are incapable of love, even in the sense of a love which is at home in the realm of vital values, such as the love of a Don Jose for Carmen. They are incapable of the warmth of the intentio benevolentiae, or I guess good intention, that every love includes. Now they may have sexual passion, but love is an unknown world to them. In this regard, it is very illustrative that Alberic in Wagner's Rheingold can attain the gold which will give him all might only if he renounces love. Yet he is not required to renounce sexual pleasure. They are excluded from love because love always demands the donation of one's heart, of the heart in the narrower sense. And these people are also unable to feel real sorrow. They certainly have all sorts of negative feelings. They can be torn by anger and wrath. They can be wounded like wild animals. They can be racked by the most horrible disharmony. They can be tortured by fear. But they cannot truly grieve. For real sorrow, the suffering in which the heart is wounded, implies a melting of pride, a surrender which is incompatible with their basic hardness. Okay, so that's one type of heartlessness. But at the same time, immorality does not necessarily make one heartless. So we have a drunkard, for example, who is prey to his vice and who does not even attempt to overcome it, but he may nevertheless have a sensitive heart. He may feel compassion. He may love. He may feel real sorrow. And also, we have a thief who need not be hard-hearted. Dishonesty and unreliability do not necessarily close the heart, so long as they result from weakness. But all these vices, as long as they're not combined with cynicism, are compatible with having a heart. But it is cynicism that as soon as it creeps into any vice, then the vice will inevitably close or silence the heart. Now we'll skip to the end of this chapter here, and we do also have an embittered heart which may be found in one who has been betrayed especially by the person whom he has ardently loved. It may be found in someone who has a great hunger for love, but who has never met the charity he has longed for, but only humiliating indifference. Instead of being treated like a human being, he has been treated like a tool. It is a hardened heart, not a hard heart. The scars of the wound have hardened it, but it is less difficult to pierce through the walls erected around this heart than those where evil passions have suffocated the heart. All right, so there we have heartlessness. Now let's move on to the tyrannical heart. This is chapter 7. Now the tyrannical heart manifests itself also in a certain weakness which results from a disordered benevolence. So there's a sense of goodness in this heart, but it's a disordered goodness. We are thinking of people who are unable to refuse any request so long as it is not strictly sinful. So when asked by a drunkard, for example, for another drink, they cannot bring themselves ever to say no. They ignore the fact that true love compels us to think of the objective good of our neighbor, and not simply to satisfy his every wish. They overlook the fact that on many occasions a no may be much more the manifestation of true love than a yes. They do not understand that even though their heart should regret their not being able to say yes, and that it should grieve that they are forced to make another person suffer, nevertheless their will should conform to the objective good for the other person. They fail to realize that real love requires them to say no. Well, let us move on now to chapter 8, the heart as the real self. In order to understand the nature of the heart, we must realize that in many respects the heart is more the real self of the person than his intellect or his will. Now, in the moral sphere, it is the will which has the character of a last valid word. And here the voice of our free spiritual center counts above all. We find the true self primarily in the will. In many other domains, however, it is the heart which is the most intimate part of the person, the core, the real self, rather than the will or the intellect. And this is so in the realm of human love, conjugal love, friendship, filial love, parental love. The heart is here not only the true self, because love is essentially a voice of the heart. It is also the true self insofar as love aims at the heart of the beloved in a specific way. The lover wants to pour his love into the heart of the beloved. He wants to affect his heart, to fill it with happiness, and then, and only then, will he feel that he has really reached the beloved, his very self. Now, furthermore, when we love a person and long for a return of our love, it is the heart of the other person which we want to call ours. As long as he only willed to love us and merely conformed his will to our wishes, we should never believe that we really possess his true self. Much as the conformity of his will to our expectations, his friendly looks, and the attentions dictated by his will may touch us from a moral point of view, yet we would yet feel that he escapes us, that his true self is not ours. As long as we feel that the benefits he bestows on us, his considerations and his sacrifices, are dictated only by a good and generous will, we know that we do not really possess the beloved, because we do not possess his heart. Now, if on the contrary, the heart of the beloved is filled to the brim with longing for one, with joy in one's presence, with the desire for spiritual union with one, well, then the lover feels content. He feels that he possesses the soul of the beloved. But he will not feel that he does not possess the soul of the beloved, but he will feel that he does not possess the soul of the beloved, as long as the beloved only has the will to requite his love, while all the manifestations of the heart are lacking. Well, you can think about that. There's the classic story of, the perfect husband, and, let's say you have the perfect husband, and somehow or other, the wife is still unsatisfied. She's not happy. She says, "You don't love me." But the husband, meanwhile, is always there. He's always providing. He remembers little gifts. He does this and that. He tells her she's pretty, or appreciates what she does. And yet she says that he doesn't love her. Well, so this is kind of what we're talking about here, where he's willing all the right things, but somehow or other she doesn't feel that she has his heart. And likewise, you can have a very gracious hostess who provides everything for you, but meanwhile you think, well, maybe you're staying. Let's say you're staying at a beautiful bed and breakfast or a beautiful hotel, and your concierge or your hostess is providing everything for you, and everything is just perfect. But somehow or other, you get this feeling like they really don't want you there. Well, that's kind of what we're talking about here. They're willing to do. They are, by an act of the will, doing all that needs to be done. But you don't have their heart. Now, not to say that a concierge or a hostess at a bed and breakfast needs to give you their heart, but they have to have their heart in hospitality, and then you know that they really want you there. So the will itself may dictate how a person lives, but it doesn't really get at the true self, which is the heart. Well, I'm just touching on these chapters, and there's much more, but of course we don't have time for that in this short novena. So suffice to say, we've now gone through the philosophical section of this novena, and tomorrow we will enter into the Sacred Heart of Jesus. So now it's time to go over to the church and pray our novena prayer. You can join me in the church to pray by clicking on the link in the description below the video for the separate link for the daily prayers of this novena. You can also print out the novena prayers on a separate link. And, well, I'm certainly enjoying this novena, and I'm glad you've joined me for it here in this lovely garden, this lovely spring day. So join me tomorrow for day 6 in our novena to the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus, and don't miss a day of prayer with us.